Hey there, let's go foraging. This is Margaret Byrd, and welcome to Color Quest. I have been in the woods almost every day for the past several months, and every time I go out into the woods, I find something new that I want to forage. So within the last week or two, the forest has really opened up with some new things that I've noticed, and so I want to take you along to go look at 4 easily accessible items to forage for natural color in my local forest. Let's go. It is early July here where I live, and there are some summer flowers that are now blooming and even actually starting to fade. So the first flower that I'm going to take from this forest is going to be digitalis, otherwise known as foxglove. So I will be collecting the petals from this beautiful flower, carefully though, because foxglove is actually toxic. So one of the things to really remember when you are foraging is learn about the toxicity level of what you're interested in foraging for, and never ever use your good cooking pots and pans and utensils for natural dyeing, ever. You don't want to have an issue by potentially putting toxins into the things that you use to cook. So foxglove is one of those. It has a high level of some chemicals that, although they are used in medicine, we cannot ingest them, so be careful. And I've heard that some people even have some reaction to their fingers, so be careful when you're foraging. Think about those things. Let's grab a little bit of foxglove to add to my foraging basket. So I've been walking past this plant for about 2 weeks, and slowly but surely the flower blooms have been falling. So I'm going to go ahead and collect what is left here, which is not many. I will look to the ground as well because there are several that have fallen, and I will be careful of touching that which may be nettles, and we'll collect those for the foraging basket. You may note that I am not collecting that much in terms of volume. I do follow the 1 handful rule when I forage, but on top of that, I am only collecting enough that I'm going to need for the fabric samples that I'm testing it with. So I am not looking personally to be dyeing a larger piece of fiber. So I only take what I need. So what you're going to want to do is remember that the typical rule of thumb for the ratio between dye matter, that's the dry dye matter, like in this instance, let's say the foxglove petals, needs to have a ratio towards the dry weight of the fiber, or you might see it as W.O.F weight of fiber. And that ratio is often 1 to 1. So if I have 1 ounce of textile or fiber that I want to dye, I will want to forage or harvest 1 ounce of dry dye matter. That is just a good place to start. There are some dye matters that are stronger and require less volume to be able to, say, dye an ounce of fiber, and there are some that require more. So you'll have to do a little bit of research, but if you're unsure, a good place to start is a 1-to-1 ratio. So keep that in mind when you're out foraging. So obviously I'm in the forest, so there are a lot of trees. And many trees, both deciduous trees and evergreen trees, have cones, and all kinds of cones make wonderful dyes. I've had a few videos here where I've looked at cones, and both pine cones and spruce cones, as well as some fir cones down in California, and the cones of eucalyptus trees, which are known as gum nuts. So here in this forest, there are so many alder trees, and particularly red alder trees. And the red alder tree has a very tiny cone, and this cone makes a beautiful neutral color. Alder cones are often all on the ground underneath the trees and are very easy to forage. So tell me, what kinds of trees in your forest do you have that you could collect either cones or things like bark? Because bark of the alder tree also makes a wonderful dye source. Get creative in thinking about the things from trees that you might be able to use for natural dye. You've seen a few videos here on leaves as well. So start thinking about what you have around you and how you might be able to use it in your dye pot. There are a lot of cones in this forest here, but alder cones are obviously below alder trees, but they're also fairly easy to identify because they are so small. You are not going to get these confused with the pine cone or fir cone, spruce cone, for example. They tend to come together or fall together in this little cluster. And you'll notice near these cones in the tree are also what's known as catkins, and they go hand in hand. My assistant found some. Look at that. Perfect. Can't pass them up when they just fall right in front of your path. one of the most obvious plants in my forest that are blooming right now is the red elderberry. You can't miss these vibrant red berries in the bushes scattered throughout this entire forest. They're in abundance. They don't last very long though. So I am going to be harvesting these, and I'm going to have to process the dye relatively quickly. They will shrivel up, and they do not make a red dye. Don't get them confused with the other kinds of elderberries. There is a black elderberry which creates more of a purplish hue, but these guys will crush down, and I'm hoping to get some sort of a very light pink. It may be a simple neutral color. I've even seen some options of altering the color to some light greens. So let's cut some of these and put them in the basket. As my ethical foraging tells me, I'm taking just one handful, and I'm going to move on to another elderberry bush to take a few more, but I'm never taking more than one handful in one location. One thing about foraging that is something to also consider is that many plants are considered invasive. And if those invasive plants have the potential to be dye material, they are a great option for foraging. Here, where I live, Oregon grape is one of those plants. I have tested this in the past. I've done it with paper. It worked beautifully. I did a cold process, I did a hot process, so I might play around a little bit with it. But what I know is foraging for it here, I am not concerned because it is in such abundance, and it will be back next year. So there you have it. There are a few of the wonderful dye materials that are in my forest now. Remember that foraging is actually a seasonal activity, meaning that I can go out in this same forest and find different things at different times of year. So no matter where you are, always consider looking for different plants at different times of year. I would love to know what you're foraging for or what you can forage for in your local forest now. So if you have a chance, drop some suggestions down in the comment section below the video. It would be wonderful to get some new ideas and for things for us to keep our eye out in terms of foraging within our local forest. So next time on Color Quest, we are going to come back into this forested area because as I was foraging today, I noticed that the wild blackberries are in the process of ripening. So hope you will join me next week. We will take a look at wild blackberry, but also some other berries that are found here in the Pacific Northwest and are ripening now in the summer months. So I hope you will get excited about maybe going berry picking. Get out there, get foraging, get creative, and start looking around and rethinking about how nature wants to share her color with you. Have a great week. See you next Friday. Natural dyes. No. So tell me. No. No, the sun is in the way.